Hello everyone. So the video that I'm going to be presenting today is going to be something regarding something that has been quite detrimental to a lot of things in my life. It has been causing me a great deal of financial turmoil. It has been causing me a lot of emotional turmoil. It has been very damaging to me over the last year, ever since I've moved to this new place. So I think this video is probably going to end up being a bit on the long side, but I would encourage you guys to stick around and hear out the full story. Especially if you live in South Africa, especially if you are someone that is planning on choosing a line provider, or someone that has already got a line provider, maybe you're not satisfied with it, because I think this will shed some light on a lot of things regarding some stuff regarding internet in South Africa. So my story basically is I used to live about 10 minutes away from where I live currently. In the place that I used to live, I used to have Octotel as my line provider. I almost never had problems. Maybe once out of every 3 or 4 months, maybe. At worst, I would have a disconnection. Very rarely. I then moved to this house, which is 10 minutes away. Same gear, same computer, same everything. The only difference is I now had to have a new line provider. Because in this area, the only line provider that there is one called Frogfoot. They're the only ones in this area. They have a complete monopoly on internet infrastructure in this area, at least from the time of making this video. Ever since I moved here, it was interesting. When we first moved to this house, I was added to a WhatsApp group of this complex. And I immediately was noticing people complaining about internet in this WhatsApp group. My girlfriend even stated that she said, "We're going to have a big problem with internet, you know that, right?" And I thought, it's probably just nothing. Surely it must be fine. It can't be that bad. Oh boy, was I wrong. Ever since moving here, I have had nothing but problems. Almost every day, I've had disconnections. I kept the same ISP, which was Cool Ideas. The only difference is I changed line provider to now not Octotel rather, but Frogfoot. Now I'm with Frogfoot. And almost every day I'd have disconnections. Sometimes the disconnections would be my entire everything. My whole internet would go down. A little orange light would pop up on my router, and the internet would be just dead. Other times it would be just my stream dying. Very often it's actually only my stream. Now, you might say, okay, well, that could be Twitch's side. That might not be related to Frogfoot. But I have a lot of evidence suggesting it is. And I'll show you that evidence soon. Before we get into that evidence, I want to add some more to the story. So, after a while, let's say a month or two of having problems, I thought, okay, you know what? Maybe the router's at fault. Maybe the router that they gave me is some cheap garbage router. So I bought a router with my own money, a fairly decent router. The internet issues persisted. I called my ISP, told them about it, and they were confused. They said they don't see problems, or they don't understand. They log tickets. I logged 1,000 tickets. I have probably logged over 100. I've probably made, honestly, at least like up to 1,000 phone calls in the last year. I'm not even exaggerating with ISPs and everything. I then, after many months of complaining, they eventually sent a technician from Frogfoot to come check the ONT, which is a little box over there that controls it. You can't see it, but it's just down over there. This person said he came here to check slow speeds. I told him it's intermittency, not slow speeds. He was then confused. He said, "I'm only here to swap out the OMT because apparently there's slow speed." I said, "That's not what you're here for. You're here because I'm having disconnection." So he called his supervisor. His supervisor then said, very undiplomatic, he just said, "No, there's no problems. Our data, our thing here says you've been online for the last 24 days. No problems. There's nothing that indicates a problem. There's no problem here whatsoever. It's perfectly fine. There's no problem." He was adamant. I told him over and over and over again, "I'm telling you, I don't care what your data says. That is not my experience." And he was adamant that it must be the ISP. And I told the guy straight, I said, if you think it's my ISP, what happens then if I change ISP and I still have problems? And he didn't want to comment on that, because obviously if he says then it's us, that would require taking accountability, which they do not want to do. So he didn't even want to answer that question. I then went and the person that was here, the technician, he said, hang on, let me call a different group. He called a different group of people, some higher senior developers. I don't know exactly what the position was. They sounded like they knew quite a lot. Since this next group, he got into a group call. And there was, I think, 2 people, maybe 3. I can't remember how many people I heard in the voice call. They were busy. I don't know what they did on the computer. They were investigating. They were also confused. They said, we don't see problems. We don't see problems. And then one of them said, wait, I see something here. And then it was like a eureka moment. They said, okay, that could be that. They found something. And then I was instructed they're going to do something. And then within the next, and then they're going to try to do something that night. And they're going to fix it, apparently. And for a week, I had no problems. For about a week. And then I had problems again. Then all the problems started happening 1 week later. It just carried on. So fast forward about another 2 months of constant complaints and problems. They then sent a different set of technicians here. Technicians that had a lot more equipment. They were much more equipped to investigate. They came with special, it looked like almost like a little iPad thingy, but it was specialized for internet. They had like graphs and everything. And immediately, within 10 minutes of being here, the person said, oh, that's too high. That he immediately said he found a problem. He said, this doesn't look right. He said, this number should be much lower, whatever. He said he's going to go, they did some calculations. They tried to calculate how close by. I don't know if it was an exchange or what they were trying to, they went to go try to find some infrastructure that was nearby. They told me to warn everyone in the group in the complex that the internet would go down for the next hour or so because they would be they would be doing some kind of maintenance. They then went and they came back about an hour later and they said they found a bent cable and they said they replaced it. And they said and they looked at the graph and they said this value is a lot better. They said, look here, if you look at this, they showed me the graph. They said this number used to be, I can't remember, something like 60 and now it's like 15. I don't remember the exact numbers. And they said, it's a lot better. This should stabilize the line a lot. And it did. For about 2 or 3 weeks, I had almost no problems. It was great. And then the problems started again. The problems were typically happening one every, let's say, 3 or 4 days. Then it would get worse. So it would become like every day. And I was complaining again. And eventually I changed ISP because I wanted to eliminate, because the ISP and the line provider were constantly blaming each other. The line provider blamed the ISP blamed the line provider. So I said, let me take away the line provider's ability to blame the ISP. So I switched ISP. So I went from cool ideas to level 7. Once I was at level 7, problems persisted. Nothing changed. I had disconnections, I had problems all the time. No change in that. I then started complaining again, of course. And one day I got put through someone who said when I called to complain, he did some checks. He checked on other people's lines in the area and he noticed they disconnected all of them at the exact same time that I did. So he said, that he's gonna make it his mission to get Frogfoot to send technicians out or to address the problem. And I got calls from Frogfoot themselves telling me that there's a problem or not a problem, but they're going to replace all hubs or switches or something in the area. They're going to replace a bunch of infrastructure. And then a few days later, they replaced apparently all the infrastructure in the area with regard, not the infrastructure itself, but rather some switches or hubs. I'm not obviously fully understanding the technicalities of it. But once again, for about a week or 2, it was great. I didn't have problems. And once again, we're having the same problems. Almost every day I disconnect 2 or 3 times a day. It pretty much on average is like 2 or 3 days of constant disconnections, maybe 1 day of no disconnections, and then 2 or 3 days again of constant disconnections. This happens on a regular basis. Now, my career as a content creator, as a live streamer, when I disconnect, I lose so much momentum, I lose so much viewers, I lose most of my work for that day. And it is incredibly disheartening and frustrating to work as hard as I do and constantly have my work destroyed by a company that doesn't care. They have a monopoly in the area. So they know they can give us the worst service imaginable and there's no repercussions for them because I have no ability to change ISP. There's nothing that I can do, not ISP, but line provider. There's nothing that I can do, and they know that there's nothing that I can do. Hence why they provide this terrible service. I'm going to show you guys something a little bit interesting here, or anyone watching something interesting. I've gotten some screenshots here. This is Down Detector. Now, every time I have disconnections, I immediately go onto the internet and type in Frogfoot Down Detector. Because what Down Detector does is it tells you, or it shows you other users that are reporting problems with a certain anything. It can be Google, it can be PlayStation Network, it can be Reddit, it can be Twitter. This will tell you how many problems are happening. If you see a big spike, it means that there's a lot of users that are having a problem. Almost every time, and I've been doing this for the last year, almost every time, like 99% of the time when I disconnect, the first thing I do is I open this site and I notice that there's a spike, or there are spikes at the exact times that I disconnected. Meaning it's not isolated to just me. As you can see here, these are examples from Frogfoot Down Detector, and I'll happily show some more. If you look at Frogfoot Down Detector, you can go type this on Google, literally just type in Frogfoot Down Detector. It will show you a graph like this, which shows you spikes or issues that other users are reporting. And almost every single time I have disconnected, I've had spikes on this graph at the exact same time. Now, this is what's so interesting about it. What is interesting here is that every time I call my ISP to try and figure out what's going on, I keep getting told this is a coincidence. There's plenty of people that use internet and it could be done. And once again, I explain, if I ask you to think of a number between 1 and 10, and I guess your number correctly, that's a coincidence. If I can do it twice in a row, that's a coincidence. If I can do it 10 times in a row, that's a crazy coincidence. If I can guess that number correctly 100 times in a row, it's no longer a coincidence. It is not a coincidence that every time I have had disconnections, there are spikes in this graph. It is not a coincidence that when I used to live 10 minutes down the road with a different line provider, I had almost no problems, but ever since moving here and have Frogfoot as my line provider, I've had nothing but problems. It is not a coincidence that I've changed routers and still have disconnections. I've had 3 different routers, still have disconnections. I've changed Ethernet cables. I've reinstalled Windows, literally factory reset my computer in case it's a software problem. I have reinstalled Windows, still have disconnections. I have done everything imaginable to get functional internet, and nothing that I do, nothing that I say is taken seriously. And this is unacceptable. If you are living in South Africa and you are thinking about getting a line provider, I would definitely think twice about going with Frogfoot. If you go look at online reviews, they are terrible with Frogfoot. Go look at them yourself. Go type in Frogfoot reviews. They are very bad. And for good reason. This is the reason. They do not care. Especially if it's a place where they have a monopoly like here, where they have no competition, they can get away with whatever they want. If you're currently if you're currently having internet problems and you cannot explain it and you do not know what's going on, check what line provider you are with. If it is Frogfoot, there is a good chance you might be experiencing the same thing that I'm experiencing. I used to be with Octatel. I never had problems. Ever since switching to Frogfoot, I have had nothing but problems. It is absolutely disgraceful that as a paying customer, you're delivered this type of service. And then I've just been flat out told that I've been gaslighted into basically people making me seem as if I'm crazy, if I'm imagining these problems, when on a daily basis, I'm literally disconnecting multiple times a day and nothing has been done to fully address the problem. From what I can tell, there is just very bad infrastructure. When I called my ISP, they even told me that this area that is known to have a lot of problems, the area that I'm living in. So obviously the infrastructure in this area is just not up to the task. And instead of upgrading or fixing the infrastructure here, it's easy to gaslight customers like me and make us all seem like we're insane instead of actually admitting there's a problem when there very obviously is a problem. And then instead of just all the gaslighting they've done, I currently see that there is a different line provider, Octatel. They are currently installing in my area. Once they are installed, I'm going to switch to Octatel. And once my internet is completely miraculously fine after switching line provider, that will be the final nail in the coffin to irrefutably prove once and for all that Frogfoot has been wrong all this time. And Frogfoot, well, I say wrong. They know what's going on, I'm sure, but they just pretend that there's nothing wrong. But once that happens, they will have no leg to stand on. They will have no excuses to hide behind, because once I do switch over and all my problems go away, there will be literally nothing left for them to say. Anyway, I thought I'd bring this video to you guys because I don't want anyone else to have to go through what I'm going through. If you live in South Africa and you are currently paying quite expensive price for internet. Honestly, internet in South Africa is quite expensive compared to most other places in the world. If you are spending 1,000 Rand or whatever a month, if not more, and you're getting this type of service, that's unacceptable. So I would highly caution anyone against going with Frogfoot. And if you are with Frogfoot currently and you are having problems, I would highly recommend switching line provider if possible, because that is very, very likely where your problems are coming from. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys learned something. And hopefully I won't have to be making another one of these, but I'll keep you guys updated with what happens when I do change to Octatel and the experience that I get with that. Anyway, hope you guys enjoy the rest of the day and evening. Bye-bye.